all my life I've had what people would call like paranormal experiences and that type of thing. So I wasn't thrust into this. My wife and I were already experiencing these kind of things long before she died. So she died in April 2017, and of course the grief was tremendous. I had no expectation of that type of pain and despair. It was really horrible. But because of things I had been involved in before and had practiced before, such as certain techniques to maintain psychological health, to for Irene and I had to develop our relationship better, I immediately started emotional and psychological triage, which was things like positive affirmations, positive visualizations. I wanted to continue my relationship with Irene. I feel like I really didn't have a choice because I didn't feel like I could live otherwise because it was that painful. So I was in a particularly good situation to try to do this. I didn't have to, I worked from home. I really didn't work that often. There was nobody else in the house, and I was free to pursue trying to interact with Irene, find some way to interact with her basically 24/7, 7 days a week. And I will say that I had exceptional feedback from Irene right from the start. I had amazing signs from her from the very first day, from the moment she died. I had amazing signs from her that I didn't just see; everybody around me saw, and it was really quite phenomenal. So my practice was, of course, to visualize Irene. I tried a lot of different things to establish contact and interaction, communication. Of course, the kind of the holy grail of it would have been astral projection visitations with her. And about a year later, I accomplished my first one of those, which was really great. But it took me about 3.5 months of really intensive work to get over the serious grief. About another 6 or so months before I was not feeling any more sadness, and basically got my relationship with her and my interaction with her normalized to where I felt very confident in it. There was no grief or pain left. Very happy with it. It was very fulfilling. It still is. We're having a great time. And what I found, though, because I tried joining like a regular grief group, then I tried joining a spiritual, afterlife, not grief group, but people who had also lost their partners and believed they would be with them again. I tried joining an afterlife community. And what I got when I was talking about what I was doing with Irene was a lot of pushback from everybody. I actually got kicked out of the grief group and threatened because apparently just saying that you feel great and that you are past the grief was something you weren't supposed to say. I didn't know that. It's not something you're supposed to say because apparently the paradigm at the time was you're going to carry this grief the rest of your life. Also, because of my kind of upbeat message, they thought I was some kind of con man, I think, and thought I was trying to con people or something. I don't know, had something to sell, which I've never tried to sell anything. I give my books away completely for free in the group, to 1,700 people. I put it as cheaply as possible as I could on Amazon, so people could afford it. I probably made $200 from sales from the books. It's that cheap, so I'm not trying to make any money off of it. But what really surprised me was that even in the spiritual community, when I started talking about this in various groups, was I got serious pushback, like I was doing something wrong and something that should not be done. Continuing my romantic relationship with my wife after she died was looked down on for some reason. I was holding her back, or I was holding myself back, or I was doing something I shouldn't do. And so anyway, that's the reason my co-founder, Mary Beth Span Mank, she met me. We met in one of these groups. We actually met in a group that I got kicked out of, and they thought I was a con man. She was actually in the administration there. And, she reached out to me after they decided to get rid of me and said that we needed to form our own group because I was giving a message that she wanted to hear and she was working on as well. And that was that it is possible to, for a third choice, instead of living with grief the rest of your life, or moving on with somebody new and putting this behind you, that there's a third choice, and that is we can continue our relationship with this person. And she was very big on that, and that it is possible to move past the grief, and she was very big on that too. So she asked if I wanted to start a group. I thought at the time, because I'm familiar with the internet and groups on the internet and what they're like. They can be very vicious and very conflicty. But I thought we'll probably at most have a dozen people who want to do this. So I figured, oh, I can manage a dozen people, I think, right? But I thought there's no way that most people want to do this. It turned out I was wrong. And it's not just older people that I thought. There's people of all ages who were desperate to find some support for continuing their relationship with their partner because they had no desire to move on whatsoever. And everybody was telling them they had to move on and get over it, and get somebody new, put this behind them for their growth, or just because, it was something they're supposed to do. So that's really what we've done. I think the biggest thing that we've done is establish a place for these people who had no support before to feel okay and supported because they want to continue their relationship with their partner. I had been following like different sites, Victor Zamet's site and some others. My brother had done astral projection many, many years ago, like 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. And so I'd heard about it. I was familiar with the concept. And so I tried learning a little bit about it, familiarize with myself with it, with what would happen, maybe some things to look out for and that type of thing, with some techniques for doing it. But this is something I've noticed as a kind of a pattern in the astral projection community. Is basically you're kind of informing yourself and you're putting your mind in this direction towards having an astral projection, but they almost always happen spontaneously. It's not like I have yet to read of anybody, even Jurgen Zive, who was a prolific astral projector. It just happens to him. He puts himself in a opportunistic situation for it to happen, but it's not like, at least I've never heard of it, except for maybe in one rare case. It's not like there's a switch. You go and turn a switch and then you're astral projecting. It just happens. And then you are familiar with enough with it that you're not frightened by it and you kind of know what to do. So I had this information, and so I lay down to rest. I didn't fall asleep, and I was doing my thing that I normally do, which I was talking to my wife, basically pretending I did a lot of pretending that she was with me. That was part of my psychological triage to get my subconscious to believe that she was still with me. And that way, a lot of the grief kind of melted away. Because even though I believed she was in the afterlife, my subconscious was programmed by society that dead equals gone forever. So I was reprogramming. So anyway, I was lying there. In my mind, I was holding her, and we were talking about our children. We have 6 grown children. And so we were talking about our children. And the next thing I noticed, and I didn't fall asleep, the next thing I noticed is I'm somewhere else. Physically. I am physically sitting on a couch instead of laying on my bed. I was physically sitting on a couch. Irene, my wife, was sitting right next to me. The conversation didn't skip a beat. In other words, there was no break in the conversation. And it was in my head at one split second. The next split second, it was out loud. We were talking to each other. And so the thing, the kind of bizarre part about this kind of talks to how our consciousness works. I didn't even notice what had happened. It happened so quick, I didn't even notice what had happened for several minutes. We were carrying on this conversation. We were talking. She was physically next to me. She looked like, when she died, she was 59 or 60, 58 years old. And she had had cancer for 2.5 years. So she was really, her body had really just, been through a war at that point. But in the astral projection, she was sitting next to me. She looked like she was about 30, 34 years old. She had her hair again, and she had her beautiful long, lush, dark hair. I was in a regular room. The room was familiar to me, but it didn't exactly match any room that I remember having ever been in. And I realized that I was someplace else, and that the scene had changed. At some point, I realized my wife had gotten up and she had walked over to the entertainment center on the far wall where there was a TV up there, and I started looking at my hands, and I looked at the couch that we were sitting on, and I rubbed my hand across the texture of it, which is something you're supposed to do in an astral projection. But I didn't at the time realize it was an astral projection. These were just habits I had learned from reading stuff. And I was thinking in my head, when did this start? When did this start happening? What is going on here? And I looked at the carpet and on my feet, and then I looked in the next room. So I was in a solid room. It felt completely 100% real. It was the most amazing thing. I could hear her voice clearly. There was no weird glitchiness. 100% solid, continuous, real situation. Completely aware. I completely knew what I had been doing before that moment. I knew I had been laying down in bed. And so the conversation was still going on about our kids, but it kind of continued on to where Irene was talking about what we could and could not do from the astral for our kids. That there were things that we could do for them, but we also could not do because that's why they came here. They came to this world from the astral to endure certain hardships, and we didn't want to, prevent them from going through these things that they came here to experience. There were things we could do for them, but we couldn't keep them away from doing the thing. We wouldn't be doing them any favors. They would, by interfering with what they came here to do. And that, it dawned on me in my head, this is a brand new conversation. This is, we've been together, at that point, almost 30 years. This is a brand new conversation I'm having with my wife. And it's from this perspective. And so I said, hey, babe. And she turned and smiled and said, what? I said, we're having a brand new conversation. This is amazing. And the look that came over her face was, it's like I instantly knew what had just happened. And it was, she realized at that moment that it was the consciousness from me alive in this world that had somehow crossed over into that world in my body there and was talking to her. It's like it just sprung into her. She realized it at that moment. So she rushes over, leans over, throws her arms around me, and gives me this big kiss. I mean, this really hard, passionate kiss. And right then, I started feeling the bed underneath me. And I was like, oh, no. So I didn't wake up. I just became, the scene just changed. It wasn't waking up at all. The scene just changed. And I was back in my body, laying down in my bed. And it was at that moment I realized, oh, my God, that was an astral projection. That was fantastic. So it was one of the craziest things. It was so great. And since that time, they've been rare. I've had two more. One involved her, and one was I was out in the city doing some things. That was really spectacular. That was a spectacular one too. But that was the first one, and by far my favorite. The reason I use those words, imagine and pretend, is I want to use the words that people have used to kind of dismiss it, because this is a very powerful thing. In my view, the pretending of something is acclimating your whatever you want to call it, your vibration, your state, your mental order, or whatever. You are acclimating yourself into the pattern of what you're trying to accomplish. And I go back to the guy who first ran the under 4 minute mile. He imagined himself running that mile in under 4 minutes. It had never been done before. He visualized it. So he was pretending over and over that he could do it. And then he did it. And because he did it, other people just knew it could be done. And so other people started doing it as well. And I think that's a very powerful thing. The imagination is a very powerful thing. It's not what most, in my view, It's not what most people dismiss it as. To me, it's like a universal search mechanism. You're not making stuff up, you're finding things. And so I use my mind, and it's not like you said, it's not like I'm pretending I'm Napoleon or anything. I am putting myself in tune with my wife and her presence and helping myself feel that by taking myself out of that horrible feeling. See, one of the things I realized, Irene made very clear to me too. She helped me understand this. That one of the things that happens, I don't know if you ever seen the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, but he dies and then he tries to contact his wife, tries to touch her, and she recoils in pain and cries out. See, that was happening to me. Is I could sense this moment of Irene that my subconscious and body interpreted as she's gone forever, you'll never have her anymore. But it recognized her. I recognized her, the sense of her, the touch of her, her presence, and it would drop me deep into the grief. I mean, it would crumple me to my knees. But I knew it was her. I could feel that moment of her being there. And I told her, keep doing it. Keep coming around. I'll figure out how to deal with the grief. Just keep coming around. And if you get by that, if you can get over that grief, of course, you have to feel your grief. I think it's a very valuable experience to have. I'm not saying avoid it. I'm saying if you can go through it and get to the other side, what I have found is that, and a lot of people in our group have found, that's when you can more easily interact with your loved one, because they are they are trying to reach out to you, reach into you, however you want to contact you. But your subconscious and your mind doesn't know how to deal with that sensation because you think they're dead. You've been trained like by constant social conditioning that dead equals gone forever. So you react this way. But once that's anyway. In my experience, I'm not. This is just my experience. I'm not saying this is universal for all people at all. But in my experience, once I was able to reach to train myself to kind of program myself that she is still with you. She's still with me. She's still right here. She hasn't gone anywhere. That made it so much easier. It's made it so much easier to have a good time with her, to laugh with her again, to enjoy our lives again, and to have this great enthusiasm for what's to come. We've been operating since 2018, early 2018. The group's been in effect. So we have rules. We've had to put in certain rules of admission. You learn the hard way, and that is you have to have physically been with your partner in this life, and they have to your romantic partner. This is strictly for romantic partners. You have to have physically been with that person in this life, and then they died, and you are committed to maintaining your relationship with that person. We do not accept people who have repartnered, and we do not accept people who have never actually been with their partner in this life, or if their partner was with somebody else when they died. We don't. That could get into a whole mess of things that we're not saying it's not valid. We're not saying that's not a valid relationship. We have certain ethical and moral obligations, and things can happen that have happened in the group, and that's why we do that. So they can come to the group. You can probably search it and find it. It's called Love Afterlife, but it is a private group. You can't get in unless you fill out the questionnaire, and then we accept you. And so you can also find it through, like I said, I can give you a link directly to it. You can inquire about it on our public website, which is redstringsociety.com. We have a lot of information there. Facebook provides chat systems, so we utilize those. We have a once a week Zoom group that you have to be a member of the Facebook group in order to participate in the Zoom group. And we do have a public website that is like strictly for informational purposes. In other words, we put that up so that people could find it. Ambassadors such as myself who talk about this openly. A lot of members of our group are not public about this for various reasons. That want to maintain their anonymity. So we put up a public website so they would have a website to refer people to look this information over. The website has an enormous amount of resources, information, videos, books available. There are interviews, free interviews. Several of our members have conducted interviews elsewhere that people who are not even in our particular situation can find a lot of help through. That is, if it's a parent or a child or some other family member or even just a good friend, we have links to several resources that can help. We have a lot of information that can help people understand they have not lost this person, that this person is still available to them, and that there are places they can go and things that they can do to help themselves. Our group members have had amazing experiences with their partners, with their dead loved ones, full physical manifestations, uh, several hour astral projections that put my little 15-minute one to shame. We have had incredible evidence of our partners working together with each other on the other side to help bring some comfort and some evidence into the lives of their partners here and of all the group here. We have had incredible events happen during Zoom meetings. So this is 100% real. I can state with 100% self certainty that our loved ones who have died are still alive and they still care about us. They're not in some mystical, faraway other place where they are not accessible to you. They're really only a thought away. They're right there available to you. So maybe you could take comfort in that just that way. And if you want to, spend some time trying to understand how to better interact or communicate or just get more information, you can use these resources. We have people from all walks of life in our group. We have scientists. We have people with professional positions. We have people who are, all around the world, from every ethnic group, from every walk of life, and they face immense challenges in this, especially. Well, I mean, I think the ratio of men to women in our group is we might have like 2% men in a group. So that's just the demographics of who dies first, I think. But women face an incredible uphill battle, especially younger women. They are under, I didn't know this. They educated me, in the group about the incredible uphill battle they have as society puts this immense pressure on them to repartner. And it's incredible. And I say younger women because that's just where the most pressure is. It's it's really unbelievable the kind of pressure that you're put under by family, friends, just your social situation. And that's one of the things that we're advocates for. We have decided to be advocates for. It's completely okay to repartner. It's completely okay to not repartner. It's completely okay to remain in grief. There's nothing wrong with that. But that is also an option to continue relationship. And the people who find out that it's okay, and many of us in this group have done this successfully and are living happy, normal lives, you know, in a wonderful relationship, ongoing relationship with our partner. I think that just, if nothing else, it gives them the realization that it can be done, that it is a possibility. And people have written me and said that this group has saved their lives because they saw no hope before. That's the kind of pressure they were under. So that's really all the biggest message. I could go on with the type of experiences that I have personally had with Irene that are just mind blowing, and they are mind blowing. But the really important thing, I think, is the group, what the group offers people.